Come on. This is embarrassing. Okay, everyone is singing this game's praises. They're all like, Alone in the Dark is back, or Alone in the Dark is good again. It really sounds like this here is another incredible remake with no notable flaws. A perfect modernization of this survival horror classic. Like with the remake of Dead Space or Resident Evil 4 last year, which reimagined the mechanics, the story and characters and even the game world to include modern technology and a much broader knowledge and insight in game design principles, while still staying true to the original games. A highly polished creation, tweaked and tested to offer the best experience possible. Yeah, that's not what this game is. The Alone in the Dark remake is a buggy mess, a misguided jank fest. A game that has infuriated me to no end, and I still like it quite a bit. There's so much awesome shit in this game. There's also so much shit in this game. Let's begin with something pretty good. The main stage of the game, the centerpiece of the gameplay, the mansion of Derceto itself. It's amazing. This is what you want from a mystery story mansion. It's so much grander than in the original. Much of what was just implied in the early 90s DOS game is now fully on display for us to marvel at. Its many rooms are distributed over multiple stories and separated by different wings. Navigating the building isn't always the most straightforward due to there only being a few hallways or rooms connecting the different wings. Every area has their own distinct look and every room has its own unique flavor. It reminds me a bit of the Seventh Guest, or more accurately, its VR remake, where all the rooms had been tailored towards the intended guests and to tie the puzzles together. It's completely different from something like Resident Evil, where the rooms, at least those in the same part of the house, share an overarching aesthetic. It makes complete sense in any of those games. The Spencer Mansion was at least supposed to look like a home, whereas their Seto Mansion had been rebuilt and refurbished as a rather special treatment facility for troubled souls. So of course the patients' rooms are custom decorated. The staff rooms are more mundane and more similar to each other, and of course the common areas are magnificently gaudy. It's a joy to wander the halls and explore the mansion. It's packed with little details, the art design is amazing and the manor has this air of mystery you want from a good haunted house. The whole game has a really strong, moody, creepy atmosphere going on, both in the deceptively clean and orderly mansion, as well as in the perverted nightmare levels. And the incredible sound design, with its faint sounds in the distance, its creaking doors and floorboards, or the sound of footsteps and the rustling and scraping from approaching enemies, it does a lot of the heavy lifting. The soundscape is so important for a horror game, and this game nailed it. The 30s setting also really shines in the remake. In the original, the time period didn't really matter that much, due to technical limitations. It was hard enough to create the 3D models and draw the 3D environments in such a consistent manner that players were still able to navigate the game world. More detail would have demanded too much of the hardware at the time, and also would have made the visuals too busy and sacrificed clarity. The Haunted Mansion was just a haunted mansion, with eerie statues and suits of armor and sabers on the mantelpiece. The game could have taken place during any period, it didn't really matter. But now, with high-resolution graphics, higher polygon counts, better sound and of course, disk space, developers can put all the details they want into a game. Things look period accurate, clothes and personal belongings are of the time, and the little newspapers and magazines further add to the authenticity. All the NPCs talk with a thick southern accent, grounding the game even more in its setting. Overall, the performances from all the actors are fine, even great at times, though sometimes the lines sound a bit flat. Same as in the original, you can choose to play as either Detective Carnby or Emily Hartwood. They play through the same segments, but have minor differences gameplay-wise when it comes to their loadout, and major differences when it comes to the presentation of the story. Cutscenes play out differently, or you encounter completely different scenes in different places. It seems Emily receives a bit more insight during her conversations, NPCs are more talkative and reveal more and more personal information, which is already a bit unintuitive. Carnby is the private investigator. He should uncover more about the mystery. Now, Emily is actually familiar with a few of the people staying at Derceto Mansion. And one of the NPCs seems to be a bit infatuated with her, so it makes sense that those open up more with her than with the detective. I guess what I want is for this to be more balanced between the two characters. But it is funny how the doctor offers Carnby a fancy cocktail and Emily the plain stiff drink. Giving me the whole story, the complete truth over 2 playthroughs with different protagonists is fine, a really good way to add replay value to a horror game. But if I get the feeling that one possible playthrough gets only the basic story, while the other gets all that and even more, then this goal isn't really achieved. It also seemed to me that Emily's scenes in particular featured some really unfitting comedy. Now, there are quite a few comedic scenes in this game, some better and some worse, but Emily's threw me off the most. But her whole character is a bit unique? I can't put my finger on it. That said, I do like the concept of the different cutscenes depending on your chosen protagonist. But it comes with a bit of weirdness when NPCs act differently even though there's no reason for it, and this extends even to the playable characters. During the intro, Emily tells Carnby that she's afraid and wants his protection, but if we then choose her as the protagonist, she herself breaks into the house and has Carnby wait for her outside. And during the investigation, he just stands around waiting for her. Maybe the game should have fully committed to the 2 separate playthroughs and have more difference in gameplay and not just different handguns. Maybe Emily doesn't have a gun at all and has to find one, but she is able to use all kind of throwables that Carnby can't use and has to rely on the ammunition-based or breakable melee weapons. They also both heal by taking a sip of whatever moonshine they collect from their flask. Now, it's perfectly fitting that Carnby, as a cliché PI, needs to drink to stay functioning. But Emily, as a more sophisticated person, could use actual medicine. Maybe laudanum, like in the Amnesia games. I mean, just imagine having both healing items placed all over the mansion, but each character can only interact with the one meant for them. The game could have gone even further and included a sanity mechanic and used Emily's cigarettes to calm her down, and maybe have something similar for Carnby. Of course, it's easy to lament over features that weren't even planned for the game, but I just wish there would have been more distinction between the 2 characters, gameplay-wise. The story departs greatly from the originals. Instead of investigating the suicide of Jeremy Hartwood, Emily's uncle, in his family home and getting stuck in there, held prisoner by literal Lovecraftian creatures, we now want to check up on Jeremy in an insane asylum, but he has vanished and now we try to track him down. Instead of a house filled with monsters, we explore a house inhabited by a few eccentric people. And instead of finding a way out of the monster house, we travel through dreams and memories of Jeremy and encounter the people stuck in there. The story of the original took place over maybe an hour. This here is a journey. And while I do enjoy exploring the mansion and watching the well-written and interesting cutscenes, I don't think the game is a very good remake. At least not in terms of gameplay. It's similar to my feelings on the Final Fantasy VII remake. They added a lot of enjoyable extra content, but changed it so much from the original that it's a completely different thing. It's fine for what it is, but I had hoped for a more truthful remake. Now, there are a lot of locked doors in the house, a lot of puzzles and items to find and to bring to the right place. But it's all pretty shallow and uninspired. Oh, it certainly looks good, but as a gameplay challenge, it never really does too much. The house changes depending on where the story allows you to go. Keys just appear in between chapters, a whole-ass ladder is placed in the garden only after you made your way all the way around, and it's knocked over, so you have to once more take the long route and prop it up correctly to finally unlock a shortcut. Why not just have the ladder pulled up and you being able to lower it once you reach the upper floor for the first time? You find items to dispose of certain obstacles, but you mostly only need these 2 or so times in the span of a few minutes and don't even notice that afterwards they get discarded. You encounter doors that are locked from the inside and unlock them a few moments later. There's not even a reason for this door to be here. It again reminded me more of The Seventh Guest, where the exploration of the house was more of an excuse to lead you to the actual puzzles. And while the puzzles, again, are visually very well designed, they don't have you puzzle that much. You either just swap pieces around to recreate a picture, many of which you can look up in the same document, or put in a code written right next to the puzzle. But every now and then you come across a number of interconnected puzzles, where you have to fully examine a room to find all the clues, connect all the dots, and inch your way towards the solution of the last puzzle. And the 2 times this happened to me so far were pretty darn amazing. I wish there was more of that. On the whole, there is just very little decision making. Ammo and healing items are capped, and very low at that. So all the perceived scarcity of items that raise the tension in a horror game is just superficial. The better you play, the more items you just leave behind. And add to that a lot of points of no return, and this survival horror game loses all of its survival aspects. And whenever there are bricks or bottles lying around, use them. You can't take them with you, you can't put them back down, and moving around with a throwable slows you to a crawl. They are so highly situational that they don't even feel like a valid option during combat. Last of Us used the same cheap trick, and people at the time praised how great it felt with all the resource management, when all the game did was forcing you into using certain weapons at certain times. It's the same here, well, aside from the bricks. If you find a lot of ammo, use it. If you find a lot of melee weapons, use them. Can't carry another drink? Heal up. Searching for resources should be rewarding, but here you're just going through the motions. It also doesn't help that the camera is really close to your character and that many environments are really narrow, so when you open a locker or wardrobe, it's hard to see what you even pick up. Ammo and healing have their little icon, but everything else only has the button prompt. Aside from resources and puzzle items and lore items, you also find random collectibles. And those are a nice reward for being observant or exploring just a bit more thorough, though this is immediately negated by the point of no return design. How should I know if one of the 2 paths I want to explore first leads me to a collectible or to the next part of the story? This has been a problem with games for a long time now and should be abolished, at least in exploration-based games and certainly in those that have you collect a bunch of random shit. Which for some reason gives you more insight into the events of Dressetto. So finding some rat poison, a syringe and a piece of bread tells me more about Jeremy Hartwood. How? Or how does me finding a dog collar, a pen and a rubber stamp unlock a gun case? And those collectibles are tied to your account, not the save game, so what you find during one gameplay carries over to another, which is fine for additional flavor text, but not for gameplay benefits. I guess it would work in a New Game Plus mode. So far I have only talked about deliberate design decisions that I either agree or disagree with. And while this is certainly helpful in deciding whether or not a game is for you, it's only half of the story when it comes to this game. Whether it's bugs and glitches or clumsily implemented mechanics, this game feels so damn janky. I had the sound cutting out and not coming back even after a complete restart of the game.
Whoa.
I was able to stand smack in the middle of a burning oil field. I couldn't draw my gun in the middle of a fight.
Hello? Grab your fucking gun.
I had the danger music starting and stopping because the trigger for it kept checking for where I stood even after the sequence started. I got stuck when descending some stairs. Whenever I crossed a loading zone, the frame rate dropped to 0. And it does so every time because those loading areas are fixed and often in the middle of hallways, so you trigger it over and over again while exploring. And it also happened during cutscenes. Melee combat feels weightless and the enemies try to rush you and so just face inside of you during swings, making it just harder to see what's even going on. You leap forward with every weapon swing and end up on top of enemies, and enemies themselves sometimes barely telegraph their attacks, so you don't even know what's going on when they stun lock you into oblivion.
Fucking hell. Fucking hell. Holy shit.
Inaccessible places are often not sufficiently indicated, sometimes textures in that regard are just misleading. Yeah, this isn't the game I hoped it would be. I hoped for more focus on classic adventure gameplay, more inventory puzzles, a more consistent exploration without changing rules and appearing and disappearing items and pathways every 5 minutes. I mean, the atmosphere in this game is great, the house is an amazing playground, the look of it all is just astonishing. But the gameplay is so shallow. It's fun to read all the intriguing and well-written notes, watch the eccentric characters do their thing. But this isn't a movie. This isn't directed by Uwe Boll. Maybe it was programmed by him. Nah, sorry, that was uncalled for. But it just shocks me that a game with such glaring flaws gets praised by everyone and their mother. This just isn't the return of Alone in the Dark. Or maybe it is, because, let's be honest, most of that series wasn't all that great.